2 nights ago now, I finished the incredible Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, a game whose quality was unfortunately not matched with sales. I was part of the problem. I picked it up at $30, which was about half off from what it initially launched at. People clamor for Ubisoft to put out quality titles, innovating in their franchises, and yet, when they do, the game is never rewarded. I really liked Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. It's honestly one of my favorite games I've played this year, and out of all the games released this year alone, and of the few I've played, it's also one of the best. From a pure gameplay level, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown stands far above the others in the Metroidvania genre. The closest title equivalent to its quality was Metroid Dread, a game that is now 3 years old. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, similarly to Metroid Dread, doesn't do an extreme amount of innovating, choosing instead to push the genre ahead with little quality-of-life additions, some of which should have happened decades ago. The big improvements over Metroid Dread and other Metroidvanias are in the tailored difficulty and smooth hack-and-slash combat, which is combo-based like a 2D Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, and also the ability to play either guided or unguided while playing the game. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is easily the most accessible Metroidvania game ever. It can be hard as hell if you want it to be, or easy as anything if you choose for it to be. This game doesn't have difficulty like Hades, where the more you play, the easier the game becomes. Here, you can choose exactly how much damage you want bosses to do to you, or enemies to do to you, damage you do to enemies, and damage you deal to bosses, as well as damage the environment does to you. I tailored my gameplay at first to deal more damage to enemies, while doing less damage to bosses, and less damage taken from bosses, though I later changed it to make the game easier before the final few boss fights. You also can gain more health, better control, extra potions, and more damage, so the game is constantly becoming more manageable. I played the game unguided, with only a few markers on the map. I never became lost. Metroidvanias are realistically 10 or so levels combined into one massive world with extra paths unlocking later on. So, having a marker that tells you what opened up next after these minor quests was really helpful. Unguided mode does away with these markers and forces the player to figure out where to go next, similar to traditional Metroidvania experiences. Another quality of life improvement was the ability to take snapshots on the fly. If you're stuck in an area, you can just take a picture and it shows up on the map. Eventually, when you've unlocked the ability, you can remember exactly where the challenge was and what the challenge looked like before going back to it. The story of Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown isn't the most special, but it is good, but nothing incredible. I'll say this, your life won't fundamentally be changed for experiencing the story, like it may be for playing through Final Fantasy VII or Nier Automata. It's still quite good, however. In a lot of ways, it feels like it would work really well as a comic book or anime even. You play as Sargon, who is one of many immortals, and Sargon is not from Persia, which plays into the story. He's also not a prince as well. There's this power called the Simurgh, and you're piecing it back together while you play the game. It's how Sargon has all these abilities that you unlock. It's essentially this game's reasoning for how Sargon can have all these fantastical powers, similar to Samus and her many power suits. The story is enjoyable for what it's worth, but very predictable in other aspects. Early on, I thought to myself that something was going to happen involving a group of characters, and it ended up happening by the end of the game. So, it's good, but you can kind of predict where certain things are going every now and again. Where Prince of Persia shines, however, is with the game's attitude. We haven't gotten an edgy game like this in a long time. Sargon as protagonist harkens back to the 360 or PlayStation 3 era of protagonists who are simply cool. I really like Sargon as a character outside of his edge. From what I've played of a single other Prince of Persia game, one of the Wii ones, those characters had an edge to them too. Sargon is not just a character with an attitude, of course, but he's just raw. When he fights, there's a certain flair to it, similar to Samus from Dread. His counters, in particular here, are great examples of this. His later interactions with the old man, his relationship to the prince, Ghassan, and a few of the immortals show a kinder side to him, alongside his friendship with the young Varam. Also his relationship to Fariba, but that's more of a business relationship. Those maps are plain helpful. A big part of Prince of Persia as a series is how good it feels to play, and The Lost Crown continues this tradition here. Sargon is the most versatile character I've ever played as in a 2D game. Everything sort of clicks in a way that feels good to play. All the abilities and speed just work well together. Combat is also a huge plus here. Dodging and blocking feels good, especially if you have certain amulets. Even with power, combat never becomes button mashy either. Certain action games just eventually evolve into that, but this one does not. It feels good to play a 2D game with this style of combat. Sargon plays like a character from a character action game. in this title, and it's so refreshing compared to the usual sluggish combat imitating a certain franchise. I never really used Menelaus' bow, but it does help to do damage from far away. Teleporting is also a big help in movement with it. All of Sargon's moves that increases exploration also are all used to expand on the game's combat. Things like this game's equivalent to Samus's flash shift, the rush of the Simorgh, is necessary for all combat encounters after a while, allowing Sargon to quickly move above an enemy to the side. Shadow the Simorgh, this game's version of the classic Prince of Persia Rewind, is often necessary to avoid attacks from bosses. Gravity Wings, this game's double jump, is great for spacing yourself from an enemy or reaching one above you. And not to mention, the Fabric of Time, this game's grapple is perfect for closing whatever gap is between Sargon and an enemy. All of these moves work well together to create the most fleshed out combat experience I've had in a 2D game, maybe ever. The graphics and frame rate are also really fantastic here. Some moments look a little cartoony, but that could have also just been a flaw exclusive to the Switch version. This game was initially developed for the console, so it runs amazingly on there. On other platforms, it runs even better. So if everything about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was so good, then why didn't it do well? Well, the answer is simple. It's Ubisoft, and it's become a part of a culture war. I don't talk about politics or gaming in politics in my videos. The most I've ever done was mention how Concord's failure was partly due to a culture war. And I feel as though Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown's lowest sales were too. It's not just the politics people drew from the title, but also Ubisoft's controversies, and also I think a lack of information from Prince of Persia fans. I'll explain the politics first, because it's the easiest to understand. The game, unlike any other in the series, doesn't star a Persian prince. It instead stars a black man hailing from some part of Africa. It doesn't matter if the story explained why Sargon is where he is, or if his race had nothing to do with the game, people were always going to infer some politic from it. It's just how games are currently. People thought, without any evidence, that Ubisoft made an African man the prince in a game set in Persia, despite that simply not happening. The closest this comes to reality is when the queen offers a crown to Sargon in the end for his heroics, which he turns away for reasons you will learn when or if you choose to play the game. I've wanted to do a video on culture wars killing games, and I think Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a really good example of this. Sometimes great games get caught in crosshairs for certain groups, even if they probably shouldn't. What doesn't help Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was its proximity to Tales of Kenzara Zhao, another action-focused Metroidvania game starring an African man, that advertised very close to Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown and was also a target from this recent culture war. I'm not here to take a stand against internet culture wars over video games. It doesn't matter to me. I don't play these sorts of games either personally, but I do sort of care when a genuinely good game is impacted by an internet controversy without any real reason. That to me was the biggest issue with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Ubisoft already had a mark theoretically on their head for perceived wokeness in games, be it some Assassin's Creed game or Far Cry. But as someone who's never played those games, I never even realized the potential that people could see the political nature perceived in other brands in a title completely unrelated. It would be like boycotting Final Fantasy XVI because Square Enix also published Forspoken, or boycotting The New Life is Strange because Foam Stars was bad. It just doesn't make sense. You can hold whatever values and beliefs you want about apparent wokeness in video games. It's up to you, though, to put the glasses down and look at a product for its factual reality. If a game starring an African man in a region extremely close to Africa geographically and historically is enough to make you not buy a game, an otherwise amazing game, then so be it. However, if you have issues with certain content being in games or terrible character designs appealing to an online audience or anything else, this game doesn't hit what you deem woke. It's just a good game. If you hate politics in your game, this title has none. There is nothing political about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, outside of maybe the politics of royalty. If you consider a prince and queen politically, this game is the most pressing example, but most wouldn't. The other issue behind Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was Ubisoft, a much more pressing concern. They are not a good publisher. While they advertised Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, they are also delaying and selling pre-orders for garbage such as Skull and Bones. They don't have a good track record, so it's understandable to wait a bit. I definitely did, but I still wanted to give this title a try. Ubisoft may have a bad track record with open world or multiplayer games, but their track record in 2D and smaller titles is phenomenal. They pushed out these infrequently, but they're amazing. I love Rayman, especially Rayman Legends. So when people ask Ubisoft for more original games in old franchises, they should be the first ones to line up and buy one when it's also a good product. You can't simultaneously ask a company to appeal to you, but when they do, you don't support it. Put your money where your mouth is, or they'll continue making slop asset retreads of Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. If you want franchises to get better, you need to support them when they do. I'm not a Ubisoft guy. I was no Prince of Persia fan before this game, but now I'm interested in the next title in the franchise. Mind you, I already owned a couple, just didn't play or beat them. Lastly, I want to explore the Prince of Persia fans who misunderstood this game. I saw this the most outside of political complaints. People wanted Sands of Time to be remade, or a new 3D game. They never liked 2D Prince of Persia. They might not have even known it existed. These were people who wanted something for a franchise and didn't get it, and that's reasonable. If Nintendo were to announce a new Mario game, and instead of a 3D platformer it was a hack and slash, no matter how good it was, I'd be a little let down. So it's fair and more than reasonable to not be excited about a game that you didn't ask for. What isn't though is the idea that Ubisoft isn't working to give you something you wanted. This game had been co-developed alongside a Sands of Time remake, the announcements of which fell under the radar. It's understandable if you didn't see the announcement, but to outright dump on a game because it wasn't what you wanted and was seemingly replacing what you wanted while your dream game is already being developed is a shame. This game was meant to release alongside Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake. That game had development troubles, however, and was restarted at Ubisoft's Premier Studio now. This game's success would have only meant good news for that remake, so it's a sad reality that it didn't succeed as much as it should have. I don't blame Prince of Persia fans for not being excited about something in a different genre from what they wanted, but if you really love the series, more openness to trying it would have made a world of difference, because from what I've seen, fans who did try it loved it, and if you try it, it will only benefit the upcoming remake with more funds and development support. It just sucks to see a game that by all measures is a quality product fail. If you want Prince of Persia, this game was for you. If you don't like anything political in a game, this game would have worked for you. If you like action or smooth gameplay or addictive world exploration or you're a Metroidvania fan, this game is perfect. This was a game that should have appealed to anyone, and it's a sad situation that it didn't. Now, I'm sure it'll sell well with sales and hit peaks eventually, but for now it hasn't, and I can only hope that the team, who are now working on a Rayman remake, have the support for their next project. Because if it's really a Rayman remake, I will be there immediately, provided it's good. I hate the narrative that gamers failed certain games. You see certain remakes or re-releases, new IP, and particularly Japanese titles, get treated with this, but here I think it's kind of true. To an extent at least. The marketing for a game could be great, the product's fantastic, performance, graphics, and gameplay, and everything else all flawless, but if gamers skip it, it's over. But thankfully, maybe it's only just started for this game. If you're a fan of Prince of Persia, I highly recommend you try it. It might be awesome to you. If you aren't a fan, I also recommend you try it. It's just a really fun game. I don't mean to glaze Ubisoft because they're not worth it. I don't like this studio, but the team who put this game together are talented. This is a fantastic game and it's more than worth your time. And now that it's always on sale for less than $20 to $30, it's definitely worth it. I wish I was able to change somebody's mind. It doesn't matter to me if the game did well, though I would still love a sequel, but it won't change my life if there isn't one. I do hope you enjoyed the video, of course. You can like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more from me. I don't do videos like this usually. I often cover Japanese games, but I think it was worth the time this once. Thank you so much for watching if you watched this far. It means the world to me, and I hope you have a great day. Seriously though, if Ubisoft is bad, this time they got it right, and if they do more games like this, the company can really turn it around for once.